stuff, definitely cutting edge. Yeah, but it's a really fun place to support people.
Excellent. So talk to me. I didn't hear about this until I met you, right? Define job stacking. Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So job stacking is also known as overemployment. If anyone's heard that term, there was a guy that went a bit viral for doing it the wrong way, working for way too many companies and getting caught. But job stacking is the concept of working 2+ remote jobs. One of the first questions people ask is like, is that full time? Does that mean side hustles? In this sense, it does mean 2 full-time jobs. And especially when we're working with clients, we prefer that route, which means, you could technically go work a bunch of part-time gigs, but then you're really only getting paid probably one full-time salary as a result of that. So you really unlock exponential income growth if you can figure out how to compress that 40-hour job into 10, 15, 20 hours a week and work multiple. And that's how you really see.
What are some examples of hypothetically like 2 people working or 1 person working like 2 different jobs? Like what's the most common of, yeah, you're in the best market possible. Like you could absolutely job stack in another one. Like,
sure.
Who are
I can give you my personal example. I think that's one of the most tangible to start. So as I mentioned, my background is in product management. I was at this place, I was earning $80K per year for a big healthcare company. It's pretty slow. I was trying to make an impact there, but it was just like not really rewarded. And the people who sat in the corner and did literally nothing got paid the same. And I was like, okay, let me do something else. So I tried the side hustles, nothing really stuck. And then when I decided to pursue job stacking, it was 2023.
How did you think about like normally what people do, right? They just say, I'm going to go get another job. So what was your thing of like, hey, I'm going to stay here and I could probably work another job as well? Like, how did that?
Yeah, for sure. So during that period before I decided to do this, I was all in on entrepreneurship. I was still working that job, but I was trying every side hustle. And through that process, I really learned, I ultimately, the things I was most successful in was supporting other people systematize and scale their coaching businesses, was something I helped 2 or 3 people with. So I had this systems mindset, and that was the aha light bulb, was like, oh, instead of trying to sell this $3,000 health coaching package I was trying to sell at the time, I was like, I could sell my $150K product management knowledge. I'm only getting paid $80K, but with a couple of resume tweaks, I could be getting double that. So it really started with vision of like, dang, like I don't like selling myself. If I could just land a couple interviews, there are thousands of these jobs out there. If I could just figure out how to deliver the value and, keep my employers happy, I could be making that entrepreneur money. And I was so burnt out at the time too. I was like, I just want to have a chill life. I want to do the things I enjoy and I want to make good money. And that was the light bulb aha moment. And I thought, to me, it was an original idea. And then digging on the internet further, I found some sub communities of people already doing this. But yeah, so for me,
I've heard about it, but I've heard about it predominantly like in tech. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So how do professionals, right, identify opportunities to actually stack these roles without being caught or like getting these conflicts of interest, obviously?
Certainly. So just actually, I haven't even answered your last couple of questions. So real quick to answer them. So like me, product manager is a great field. For some of these other people, really a root question of your question is what fields does this work in? So product management, sales, marketing, really anything that there's a lot of jobs out there, it can work. I would have thought sales would be one of the hardest fields to do it, but we've put at least 10 people through the program who have managed multiple sales roles for various reasons, right? Like you build up a sustainable book of business and you can manage it, without getting too into the weeds, it's doable. But just to generalize for anyone listening, really any field of work that has a lot of remote jobs, it can work. There will always be nuances of your specific company, your specific manager, of how psycho they are and whatnot. I was fully prepared that like my vision was 500K across 3 jobs. And I was open to landing a job and realizing it wasn't supporting that vision and just leaving. So I was just focused on how do I create a machine that applies to so many jobs for me. I'm getting so many interviews per month that offers are coming kind of automatically and I can pick and choose rather than, oh, I got an offer, I have to jump on that one. That's the main thing. And then what I would say about how do you do it the right way? Everything for me is about the ethics and the sustainability of it. And even if you leave the ethics off the table and all you cared about was money, if you're not focused on delivering the ROI value for the company, you're going to get let go pretty quick. So if you can go into it the mindset of they're paying me 100K, I better deliver 400K of value, but then that's the only non-negotiable. So how you do it, when you do it, all those things, you're more thinking like a consultant of like, I have to just deliver this thing, but I'm going to do it on my terms. And I'm not going to like create a self-identity around being part of this company. I'm going to get my work done, but I don't need to like, they're not paying me for my 40 hours. They're paying me for the value.
Yep. What's the biggest misconception do you think that people have about job stacking?
I think it's really in the ethics and the morals of it all. Cause I think you could say that's sketchy. That's like a scoundrel thing to do. And you're just screwing over these companies. And I just have my way of thinking about it. I share my perspective. Everyone should just make their own conclusions and do their own research. But I really think it is that misconception of it doesn't have to be bad. And also kind of when you look at the landscape, companies choose to withhold truths from their employees as well. They're not going to announce the huge round of layoffs that are about to come. They're just going to do it. Yeah. Right. So you can say we live in this idealistic world where if you don't tell your employer you're doing something else with your time, you're violating some sort of ethical code that exists. And, I'm not here to decide that for everyone else, but I think some of those misconceptions are worth considering for everyone of like, does my company really care about my well-being? And what would happen if I get laid off? Like, do I have a fallback plan? Do I have a safety net or not?
What do you think? And I do know too, you have throughout your program, I've read that you actually have like some systems to put in place to actually help people do this, right? Because it sounds like you're focused on those top performers already, right? Like, hey, you are a sales professional. If you've been above quota, you can probably make a lot more money doing different things because there's a point to where it doesn't, like on the product, if you can do your job really fast and you can't get that ROI for people, I do know a lot of people that are high performers, they get bored too. They're like, hey, I've already done this and there's nothing to do. And
yeah, for sure. And it's kind of, that's something we look at often is if you just, what are all the options on the table, right? So you guys are supporting executives in leveling up and getting that next raise, which is going to be great for a lot of people. And I think what's kind of cool and sexy about job stacking is like, okay, if you do the traditional thing, if you get that big raise, you might get that 20 to 30% jump in income. If you're not that fortunate, you mimight get that 2 to 3% raise per year, just the standard thing. But if you chose to job stack, you could stay at your same level, but 100x or 100% increase your year-over-year earnings essentially.
How, when you went after those 3 roles for $500,000, how did you manage your time, your energy, and your focus while balancing like multiple roles? That sounds very challenging.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really cool because I just initially designed what we now do for our clients for myself, which was first off, systematizing the job search was just so necessary because it's such a time suck. I'm sure your clients deal with it as well, but none of this would have been possible if I was the one applying to jobs and that huge chunk of my brain power was going to that. So we built this system that uses AI and also VAs to apply to thousands of jobs per month. But initially I hired a VA who's now our COO to just run my job search for me. So it allowed me to focus on my existing job and also just brush up on my interview skills and my interview prep and just be really dialed and accelerate that learning curve to even perform in interviews. Once I had my second job, and this goes back to sustainability, I was like, let me just pause all this. I just want to spend 3 months getting locked in on this job. I want to understand the product. I want to build social capital with everyone on my team so everyone thinks I'm a high performer and perceives me that way. So I have more influence and I can manage my own calendar better. And only once I felt like both the 2 jobs I had, I could manage collectively in under 20 hours a week, did I turn the system back on, start interviewing again, and then landed a third job. And I worked 3 product jobs for about 8 or 9 months until I went full-time into this business. But even then at that crazy scale, like 2 jobs is, I would say, manageable for anyone. You may have that weird bad apple job. I think almost most people, I shouldn't speak in absolutes, but even at 3, it was just calendar management, having a system in place to make sure my calendars were all in sync somehow, even though you can't really do that through automation. It was getting really good.
What do you do with your LinkedIn profile when you have 3 jobs? What job do you put on there? Do you just hide your LinkedIn profile at that point?
Once you have 3, you just like, if you're in sales, you might have to have like 3 LinkedIns. Sales is the tricky one because you
just like Delaney William, Delaney, your middle name or something.
Basically. Yeah. So for me, unfortunately, I didn't have to do that. First job, standard. Second job, I would treat it as if I just didn't update my last, like,
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
no one ever asked, but if they had asked, I would have been like,
Yeah.
use LinkedIn, stop being a weirdo. Like, it doesn't matter that much.
Well, sales would be hard because you typically, you're probably doing reach outs on LinkedIn. You're probably,
No, we do have this client who's here in Austin, and he has 3 sales jobs. One is hybrid, and he goes by his middle. I don't know if he has 2 or 3 LinkedIn's. I think probably just 2, but he goes by he's like so committed that he goes by his middle name.
Don't call him out. You said Austin. We're narrowing the territory now.
I know. Yeah. I can't say anything beyond that because he'll get really mad. But yeah. So there's, depending on how committed someone is, there's definitely ways to navigate it.
How's the mindset different? Because everyone's been taught, here's the thing, right? Everyone's always taught to do what, right? To climb the corporate ladder. You should climb the corporate ladder. You should do this. This requires really really kind of more of an entrepreneurial mindset. How do you think the mindset's different than like, hey, climb the corporate ladder approach?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful blend of the two. It definitely requires you to have a confidence in yourself to learn something new and step out of your comfort zone. It definitely requires you to be willing, to determine what your risk tolerance is and how you're going to hedge risk in your own life. I think there's just an equal argument that having just one income source is more risky in a lot of ways, but just being able to even mentally open yourself up to doing things in a way that's not just herd mentality. Because even myself, when I first started, it was something I was like, dang, is this like, the fear that builds up in your mind and like the, really carving your own path is not always an easy thing to get behind. So I'd say those are 2 of the biggest things. And I think what's really cool, and it's a blending of the 2, is that compared to entrepreneurship, you actually don't really have to learn many new skills. Like you might have to brush up your time management a little bit, but the beautiful thing is you're just copy pasting the thing you're already good at. So yes, there will be some new things to balance and learn and improve, but rather than having to learn a whole new skill set to launch a business and take on some crazy risk because it's just a completely new domain, for a lot of people, this is like, oh, cool. I just have to like do this for another company at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Next 5 to 10 years, what do you think? Because I've heard about people doing this.
Yeah.
Gets easier, gets harder. Is this just a trend or probably the future?
So one of my favorite quotes that I've heard, it's Reid Hoffman. So he's the founder of LinkedIn. I'm guessing he had a quote in an article or an interview maybe 8-9 months ago where he's like, by 2030, the 9 to 5 is no longer going to exist. And that's pretty clickbait. But my interpretation of that is, I mean, we even see it now. You're an entrepreneur. I employ quite a few people. And the desire to employ someone who's just a regular 9 to 5er at an expensive American wage is just less and less appealing. You could hire someone in Latin America, a software developer, for 1/3 of the cost. You could hire someone in the Philippines for 1/10 of the cost. You could hire a fractional UX design company to do your designs for your web portal.
Well, I also see, is this a part of job stacking? I see people that get a job and then have outsourced their job. They get the product, they review the finished product before they submit it. I know people are doing that right now. So.
And that is definitely a strategy that can be leveraged in job stacking. It's definitely one of those risk tolerance things because it's definitely, I don't think anyone's going to be happy to know that that's what's happening. I'm glad we're talking about this because these are like ethical things, because really it's like, if it's done, it's done. And if it's done, and if I had to submit it and somehow, whether it was my friend down the street, my wife did it, or someone overseas, I mean, my name's on it. I'm responsible for it. I mean, ethically, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, exactly.
It's done. It's good. The results are there.
Exactly. And if you wanted to play the devil's advocate card, you could be like, yeah, you maybe withheld some truth. And, also just, again, who knows if anything would happen, but people should be aware that doing that probably violates your employment contract to some degree. Would they legally pursue you for that? Probably not, unless it was some super high risk information that you're sharing with someone in India or whatever.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely something people do. And it's the pro point and pro lens to that is like, hey, you're being rewarded for your innovative mindset. Like that person could have if they were aware enough, they could have just hired that person in India and, conveyed to them what the project requirements were and save money. But you had the innovative approach to do that. So it does go both ways.
What do you think about leaders and business leaders, because we have, a lot of people who watch this are leaders in corporate America, right? All across the world. How can they, they're going to have to adapt to this for real. And instead of fighting it, what advice would you have for them? Because they're likely going to be managing people doing this. And I'm with you. As long as value is being perceived or delivered above what they're paying you, for me, I don't have a problem with this. Like when I was a recruiter in the military, when my mission was to get 2 a month and there's a month I got 6, they would leave me alone most of the time. Like, hey, leave that guy alone. He's already doing whatever he does. Like, who cares no one was asking like, hey, where's Tim at? Where's Tim? It's like, he's probably out getting deals done. That's probably why he's not here. What is how do leaders shift their perspective on this? They're probably, I assume they're probably not ready, but any ideas?
For sure. And it's an interesting thing, especially in those Reddit sub communities. It comes up a lot of just how different companies are navigating it. Because it's probably happening in almost every organization at this point, or likely to happen. I've come across people who are really offended and really don't like the concept that it's super unethical. You shouldn't do it. And that's validity, right? Technically, if you really want their 40 hours, they would probably have more output if they were only doing your thing. I personally employ at least 5 to 10 people who do other things with their time. And often they're actually better. They're so efficient that I know for sure in both client success and sales, I have people who are way better than the people who are fully dedicated just to our company because they're efficient. So I personally don't care. Like if I were to encourage a leader, because the people who harp on it, what they're not doing is setting clear expectations with their team and having really transparent, open communication.
For sure.
So I would tell anyone like, hey, I think it's more about you to set the expectation in the role and to hold your people to that. And like, that's what a good leader does. Because for me, I see no problem because I know what I need out of my people. And I want to incentivize them to be even more all in. But as long as they're hitting their expectations, which is kind of leadership 101, I don't have a problem and we're good.
Yeah. So for listeners considering this, what's their first step to responsibly, right, exploring like job stacking while still keeping integrity and their performance intact, right? Because I want to, note that this isn't for an underperformer who's not good at what they do. They're probably not even going to be able to manage their time. But for the people out there that could say they want to do it responsibly and they do want to get a next thing, right? What advice would you have for them, or what's the first step?
Yeah, for sure. So we put about 300 people through this process at this point. We found that the number one indicator outside of having the experience needed, to your point of actually being an expert, is how big is the job pool you're going after. And the reason we share that is, you've had sales experience. So I think you can appreciate this analogy of who's more likely to close a deal, the person who talks to 1,000 people or the person who talks to 200 people, right? Yeah. Probably the former. So all things equal, if someone wants to actually have a predictable outcome pursuing this, picking a pool of jobs, a market of jobs that has a large enough volume, ideally at least 1,000 a month, will set you up for that success. So for us, we use an estimated benchmark of 1% interview rate for every job you applied to, because it's so hyper competitive, 500 people every job. So the reason I share this is the first thing to consider is you could jet down the wrong path with the wrong type of job title and not even really do the research to realize, there's only a couple hundred jobs in this pool, which might seem a lot, but that might only be 2 or 3 interviews once you've applied to all of them and you're kind of left scratching your head.
Well, and another thing, I like this applying for job thing because we've had this conversation before. I'm not really a fan of it, but when you talk about 2,000 jobs, like the average person, I mean, even if they're working day and night, they're only going to get 200 apps out. It's the reality, and for these senior level positions, it's kind of ineffective. But I was like, well, hey, 2,000 though, some people are probably going to call you. That's why, I'm a fan of the LinkedIn connector, because it's 3,000 people a week. It's like, hey, it's 3,000 people, but a lot more than 200. So picking a market, you're right, that does have the need would be super important.
For sure. And then to build off of that, especially for people who are your listeners, I think the biggest consideration, because we talk to quite a few people with that senior leadership background, and we'll turn them away typically if they do want to go after those higher caliber. Sure,
yeah. There's not a lot of scientist positions posted, a bioscientist.
Exactly.
Or a CEO of a mid-sized private equity company, you know, there's a handful of them out there.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's really about like, and really reflecting on like, what do you actually care about? Because to your point, we're all pretty conditioned to want to climb the corporate ladder, but what drives that? Is it like, we really find meaning and purpose by being the VP of sales? Or is it, I'm conditioned that status is important, that title is important, that I'll be like a worthy human if I have this title? Or do I really want free time with my family? And I could just go layer on a sales manager or literally even an account executive position on top of that, and actually be more aligned with what I truly want versus what I've been conditioned I want. And people might say no. They're like, no, I really do want that VP of marketing role. And it's like, great, cool. Go after that. And here's another thing for leadership in particular, the job stacking does get more challenging when you're above the senior manager level, because your responsibility.
You're in meetings half the day.
Yeah. And just like, and even if you weren't, just like the level of expectation, like you're kind of expected to be always on. If there's a fire, like you should put it out. You're being compensated at that level to do so. And it's much easier to just be like, hey, I got my thing done when you're senior manager. Even I think once you even creep up to director, you're kind of skating on thin ice in a similar sense. So I think that's just helpful information for anyone considering it. It's like, you don't necessarily want to do it for those high level roles unless you are presetting the expectation that it's fractional.
Yeah. The other thing is talking about just what drives you, it's very, it's typically not money for sure. I know you've talked to a lot of people. We've spoken to thousands of people here. Very rarely do people say, I love my job. Everything's great. I just want to make $20,000 more dollars. Like we never have those conversations. It's always about, more fulfillment or a title or more freedom with their family or something like that. But for when it's not about money, I don't think they might have thought about a whole nother job. Then it's like,
Yeah, 100%. Can of worms.
Someone who makes 150 that could, or whatever you were making, I think you said you were doing 90 and then you knew you were worth 150 and all of a sudden you're making $500,000. I mean, for you, for most people, that's life-changing money. Imagine going from 90 to 500.
Yeah.
Like, that's significant.
Literally. Yeah. Literally life-changing.
So what questions didn't I ask you that you think that I should have asked? Does anything come to mind?
So one of my favorite things, because the job stacking stuff and the nitty gritty is great, but I'm always trying to think about the why behind all of it and even just kind of future pacing. So I really like the question you asked earlier about what does 5 years from now look like? And I do think there's that aspect of it where, and even the examples I gave where you can offshore jobs, you can get fractional work. I think that speaks to where the economy is heading and that things that, in my opinion, are going to get more and more competitive. And it's going to be harder and harder for people to set themselves up in not even necessarily like crazy wealth, but even financial security in a sense. I did see some data recently that the average person takes about 5.5, 6 months to land a job. And this is, whether it's job stacking or any other thing, I think something I would encourage everyone to think about is like, do you have a lifeboat or a safety net in that sense of like, if you got laid off tomorrow, like what is your fallback plan? Because we talk to so many people who do spend that 6 months unemployed and they eat through 60K of their savings and now they're in like really deep debt and it's really sad. Yeah. So I think it's worth thinking about because we are all conditioned to just, work that job, do the safe thing. So, or many people are, to really just think about that. Like, am I actually as safe in this thing that is the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And how do I feel about that?
That's one of the things I always talk about too, is recession-proof your career.
Yes.
Because here's the thing. If no matter what you're in, sales, marketing, finance, now I get it. Microsoft sometimes just whacks a division. I'm not talking about that. Those are one-offs, but very rarely do they let the top performing sales professional go who has a good attitude, who drives revenue. Why would he get let go? They're not going to let the ops person go that saves a bunch of money and does, you know what I mean? So, just being great at what you do, regardless of, even if it is job stacking while you're there, most people don't, they kind of, most people are average, unfortunately. Most people live paycheck to paycheck. Most people don't invest in themselves. They don't focus on development. And then they wonder when these big rifts happens, like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Yep. So I always tell people, like, create so much more value. Because you're right. If a company spends $100K, they want $400K value out of you, just of that revenue per employee.
Absolutely.
I think in 5 to 10 years, it's crazy. I don't see consulting. I don't see offshore. I really do think all of that's going to be replaced. They're already, economists are coming out with a term called post-labor economics, which is like people not working.
Yeah.
You have Elon Musk with Tesla bots. You have generative AI about to be there. And I'm like, I think the first thing that's going is manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like you get bots with a little bit of whatever. That's the first thing that I think. Yeah. And then, we could talk about this for a while. And then, trucking, logistics, transportation, you have self-driving vehicles, and then you have robots picking it up. I mean, I don't understand. So that's why I tell people every time I get a chance to learn.
Yes.
Learn ChatGPT, Grok, learn whatever you want, learn about AI agents, learn about how this is transforming business. Because especially if you want to do job stacking, being able to be more proficient using tools that are already out there is just going to be vital for the job stacking, and even more vital too if you're working, a job just yourself.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I see that same thing happening. There's a book that I just got. I'm annoyed that it's only on Kindle, but I don't know if you've heard of this guy. His name's Imad Mostak, I think. He's the CEO of Stability AIs. He's been doing a lot of tours lately, but he just wrote a book that's like I think it's called The Final Economy or The Last Economy. And I heard him on a podcast, and it was really interesting stuff. It's like, what are the economics of the future that we're going to live in, and what's that going to look like? But I totally agree. Like, aside from, I think to me, it's two big takeaways. One, we have maybe 5 years of calm before the storm to like scoop it up. It's like, we don't want to live in this fear-based decision-making mindset, but it's like writing's kind of on the wall. And at least for me, it's like, I have 5 years. I even tell myself I have about 5 years to like do what I want to do in this world that actually makes sense to me. And then everything beyond that, I don't really know.
Well, and really saying like, what can AI not replace?
Yeah.
There's a couple things. AI can't replace real estate. So for all my directors, VPs, and execs out there that have a little bit of money, my suggestion, I'm not a financial advisor, but it would be to over leverage yourself and get some of these properties that are traditionally, they always go up in value. But the concerning thing is, what happens how do we have inflation when there's no economics? Then there's no inflation then. So it's like, it's really weird, but I'm trying to think about like, what markets will this not impact? It's going to impact finance and banking for sure.
Yeah.
Real estate, I don't know. That's probably the safest, I would think. What are your thoughts? What do you think is safe?
Yeah, I want to caution myself on making any like investment related advice, because it's definitely not a zone of genius for me. I do agree that like I spend a lot of time watching that stuff, because I think especially around inflation, just the US debt problem compounding with the AI displacement is like really, really bad and scary.
Well, it's really good for investors though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you put your money in something that will benefit from inflation.
Exactly. And we've done that. We just have, we aren't, investors specifically in real estate, but we bought a house. We held it for, we held it for 2 years. That was our first home. Me and Christina bought in 2017. We sold it 2 years later, made $75,000. Our last house we bought, and we're going to sell that for almost $400K more than we got it for. It's just like inflation is just, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I think that stuff's great. I think, even just going back to your point of one thing I did want to add to what you said about the high performers not getting axed. I do think that's how it's always been. And I think even the high performer who doesn't use AI could get axed by the high performer who's 10x better than that guy because he uses AI as well.
For sure. You have to learn that.
You could be a cold caller, and then I could knock on your door and be like, hey, I have this software that cold calls, and it sounds like a human. It's not illegal, and it closes at a 3x rate. You want to use it?
And then and it's perfect. Yeah. What are you going to do? That eliminates sales. We're in HubSpot CRM, and the enhancements they've made into that while already utilizing AI, it is just absolutely incredible. Like the things that you can do. And now they have AI inside of it. I mean, there is just, my chief marketing officer showing me all the things we can do. And I'm like, this is crazy. Weird. Yeah. This is a little creepy. It's going through, because you can hook. It's kind of like Google's made this Google Workspace where they're connecting everything, they're connecting calendars and email and everything. And then everything's and Zoom, and everything's being connected inside of HubSpot, and it's learning about your business. And it just knows. Today, we just got this thing called Breeze, and it literally, through the Zoom transcriptions in HubSpot, it literally pinged us. This is a red alert. It says these people are ready to buy your product based on all of these things. Like, contact them immediately. We were like, hey, sales team,
you'll get on that.
But I mean, it's getting pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm typically a super optimistic person about everything. And when I look at this stuff, I'm like, it's hard to paint a picture that looks rosy. So maybe the third option is also, not like there's now a smorgasbord of opportunities, but I really do think the entrepreneur is one of the last things that will fall to, because it's like, who benefits from this stuff? Like me and you do, right? Like we may have to let go of a bunch of people, and not even have to, but just like, if you're choosing, we could scoop up, like, very few entrepreneurs are going to be like, you know what? I prefer having this messy, annoying, stressful sales team when the AI could just do it for me. Right. And some people may still choose that, but I think the ultimate people who are going to benefit at least
down the street in my new housing neighborhood, I saw the first ever automatic lawnmower.
Those are
freaky. It was mowing the lawn, and it has sensors on it. And I was like, what? Yeah. Okay. It doesn't surprise me. I assume it was coming out soon, but I was like, this is legit mowing their lawn perfectly. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not good for landscaping companies. I've seen like a pretty hilarious viral video. Sad, but it's just like a guy cutting lawn on one side of the street who's like, you can tell that's his job. And he just standing there looking all defeated, like watching the robot. And it's wild. It's a wild world we're living in. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the Career Report. Thanks for chatting with me. I always love talking about what's going on in the market, what different people are doing. I've heard people doing it. So thanks for kind of sharing your perspective out there.
Of course.
And I really appreciate it. How can people get connected to you? Where should they follow you? What should they go to?
Yeah, for sure. Easiest place is Instagram at Delaney William _. You can also visit our website, elevatedtech.us.
Excellent. Well, hey, appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.